Welcome to the Project Management Happy Hour. Our aim is to share frank and honest discussion about real-world issues in project management, but do it in a way that's not too dry, though it might get a little salty sometimes.
Kim, I'm really excited for our guest today.
Me too.
Today, we're going to have Dawn on to talk about the players in Projectland, and in particular, getting sabotaged on your project.
Oh, I hate that. I love her frameworks that she has. They're so simple and so relatable, and we're going to dive into that more in this episode, but definitely really useful.
For years, Dawn has helped organizations navigate the chaos of Projectland, where priorities shift, stakeholders clash, and executives expect miracles. That sounds like us. Having worked with everyone from accidental project managers to C-suite executives and PMO leaders, Dawn discovered that projects rarely fail from a lack of templates. They fail because the humans involved aren't set up for success.
And that insight led to the #1 best-selling book, Meet the Players in Projectland, Decide the Right Project Roles and Get People on Board. And this uses animal avatars to help readers recognize the personalities that show up on every project. Dawn also co-edited and co-authored Projectland Goes to the Movies, 22 Blockbuster Strategies for Project Success, which is a really fun book. And this book draws on film to teach lessons in leadership, teamwork, and decision-making under pressure. Dawn is a passionate person about making project leadership more practical, more human, and a little more fun, which we try to do that. Welcome to the show, Dawn.
Thanks for having me. I've been so excited to speak with you both again.
I know we had such a great conversation leading up to this. I'm so excited for our chat today.
Now, before we jump in, though, there's a question that I have, and I love to ask this of all of our guests, and it's this. Dawn, what is the most valuable business lesson that you had to learn the hard way?
That is a great question. I was scrolling through all the business lessons that I've learned over the past decades now. And I think, especially for this conversation and for the PM Happy Hour audience, the one that really stood out was when I was transitioning from being a consultant in a tech firm to a PMO leader inside an organization, a Fortune 500 organization, I realized that my upbringing completely failed me. And my consulting work also failed me, because when you're a consultant, you're hired, let's say, by the hour to give advice for a certain gig. And so people expect you to be direct, professional, get the job done, period, move on. Well, when I became an employee and an insider, that is not at all how people operated.
Correct.
So I said something in a meeting, and I went back to my office, and one of the gentlemen that had been there a long time came to my office and said, "I have a question. What did you mean by the thing you said?" And I just repeated it. I'm like, I meant
what I said.
The exact thing I said. I repeated it. And so I'm like, I'm pretty confused about how that might be confusing to you. I mean, it feels pretty obvious to me.
Cut and dry.
Yeah. And he was like, well, I wasn't sure if you really meant that. And it happened a few times. And I'm like, what is going on here? I was so confused. And then I realized these people are doing so much work listening and then trying to interpret what it really means. And so I just started to tell people, listen, when I say something, if you have a question, just ask it in the meeting, because now we're having 2 meetings.
Mm-hmm.
For the one meeting that we could have, when you could just be like, do you mean this or that? Or what else is behind that if there's something that you're confused about? Because generally when I say something, the something is all it means. And so I was like a new creature to them. So that was a very strange environment for me. And so I learned that people don't always mean what they say or say what they mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a little bit of an anomaly in that environment. And I much preferred consulting is what I learned in the end.
It's so funny. I learned like a similar but different lesson where when you go from consultant to internal project manager, It's like when you are a consultant, they're paying you to get the job done. So they want you to get in, do your thing, and get out. And being clear is what they expect from you. But I don't want to overuse this word, but becoming an internal PM is a bit like joining a family. And I don't mean joining a family from like, oh, the business loves you. I mean more like, you have to decide if you're going to tell mom that she has a drinking problem, because that'll make the rest of the evening really bad for everyone, unless you do want to have that fight tonight, because it is worth having that fight. Like, when you move to the internal politics, you make different choices with how you word things, which leads to that indirect culture depending on the environment that you're in. So I also had did you really mean what you said about things that I said?
Wow.
Which were effectively, but it would be whenever I would say things like, this is not working well. And they would be like, it is working. It's just not working the way that your current rubric is evaluating it. And I'm like, okay, so we have different rubrics that we're going to choose to evaluate things with. Very similar lesson with, I think, the same underlying reason, but different pieces of feedback that we got about it.
Wow, that's fascinating. Kim, did you ever have a situation like this?
I had a lot. It was a hard lesson for me to realize that when you communicate, you're not sharing facts, you're sharing information of what the audience needs to hear. It's not necessarily what they want to hear, but there's something that they need to hear, and it may be some part of the facts or some way.
Mm-hmm.
It's more about what do they need to hear, not what is the message I have to convey.
Yeah.
Perfect.
The language is different depending on the context and scenario needed. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Eventually they got it that I really just mean the thing that I say, but they had to get to know me better until they trusted that, because that wasn't their normal experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. I love all of us together on this same journey.
Yeah, and hopefully the lesson is helpful to anybody else who might be struggling with this right now.
So Dawn, we're really excited about our topic today, and this is related to a book you just released called Projectland Goes to the Movies. What's this about? Well,
what we did was we brought together 22 authors, including myself and my co-editor, Jerry Manis, from around the world. And we each wrote a chapter inspired by one of our favorite movies, with a lesson for what I call Projectland and Project People, because movies are such a great way to engage people. They're an amazing way to show a situation and then have a discussion about it. And there are a whole lot of us, it turns out, that enjoy movies. And so it was a really fun book to write a chapter in, and then to read all the chapters, edit them, work with the authors to help them bring their stories from the trenches to life, and the stories that they were trying to convey around the lessons in the movie. So yeah, Projectland Goes to the Movies in 22 Blockbuster Strategies for Project Success is the subtitle. It's a lot packed in there.
Very cool. I actually know some of the people that wrote some chapters, so it's kind of cool to see some of the other people I know there.
Great.
And I can really sympathize with this. Like, there's a couple of these chapters, like the one about aliens, where Lieutenant Gorman, he's there, and everything, all crap is breaking loose, and he's freaking out, saying, "I want you to lay down suppressing firepower and use the incinerators and fall back by squads." And the whole thing is going to crap, and Ripley's like, "Get out of the way. I'm taking this over." And I have been there. I have been Ripley, and that must be why I always love this movie so much.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? And that it triggers that. And that's part of the hope that we have, is as people read it, either it's triggering, like senior folks are going to say, I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
And folks who haven't been there yet in their Projectland journey may say, aha, I'm going to note that for when I do hit that situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the Players in Projectland, that came out a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so May 28th, 2024 is when Meet the Players in Projectland came out, and it became a bestseller, and it was an Amazon hot new release, which was just, I could have cried. I'm not a crier, because I couldn't imagine that happening, and it happened. And I know that date because it's my father's birthday.
Oh, yeah, convenient. to have dates that light up with each other that you're going to know your whole life.
Correct. So that's how I know the exact date. We chose it and because it was, we knew when the book was coming out, but then it was also a very special date and for me. And so that's how that worked. And then Projectland Goes to the Movies came next. And that came out on, oddly enough, January 20th, 2026, which is my niece's birthday. It just so happened.
I love it. You're going to write as many books as you have family members. So what a prolific writing career you have ahead of you.
Oh, boy.
So in your first book about Meet the Players and Projectland, you talk about different archetypes that you're going to run into as a project manager when you're running a project. And there are 11, at least, of these characters that you'll meet, these archetypes. And one of the things that you do in Projectland Goes to the Movies is like you talk about how those archetypes show up in these various scenarios. And so I would love to have, just for our audience, to get a little bit of a rundown on a couple of the players in Projectland.
Sure. Over the years, I realized that people understand animal behavior, right? So let's start there with why did I choose animals? Because I did get some feedback from some people that were like, what is she talking about animals for? And so the reason is because when you have a snake, if you're talking about a snake, you understand inherently what you should expect from that snake, right? If you're talking about a lion, then you inherently understand what you should expect from that lion in their behavior. And so what I realized after many years in Projectland is that people have certain behaviors, and a lot of times, especially in the pressure cooker of Projectland, there's always a timeline there. It's visible. You're under the microscope with executives, et cetera. People a lot of times are working under fear, and fear creates some behaviors that we don't always think are helpful.
I love the phrase, you have a style under stress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got a style under stress.
Yes, that's so true. And so to talk about the animals a little bit, which you asked, just wanted to give the context first. We have the team members, which are their own set of animals. And then we have the stakeholders, which I have a little rhyme to help people understand what I mean by stakeholders. Sounds a little Dr. Seuss-esque, I think, but it's stakeholders are the people outside your project team who might love your project, hate your project, or be somewhere in between. And so the idea is that when I say stakeholder, I mean people outside the project team.
Mm-hmm.
And so the animal avatars for those are, drumroll please. Perfect. The happy dog is the cheerleader. And so you know these people. These people are the people who have been lobbying for your project for years. They are so excited about your project, they'll do anything to help. So just like my happy dog, when I come home, she's so excited. And when I cook, she's so excited because she knows something's going to drop because I'm a very messy person in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah, same.
But she's a 50-pound pit bull, and so she can get underfoot, and which is not good if you're running around a tiny kitchen like I am. So cheerleaders can also make their own risks.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a story that goes with every single animal. The in-between, so that was the Who Loves Your Project. The in-between is the finicky fan flamingo, the flamingo. So we know that flamingos are very, very finicky about their diets. So they have to eat certain things to have that beautiful pink color. And they also flock and squawk together. And having spent 20 years in Philadelphia, I met a few finicky fans there, that would sit back at the beginning of the season and go, I don't know if I'm going to really support the team this year. And then, the playoffs, we're in the playoffs, and then the whole city is going wild when the team goes to the playoffs. So the finicky fans are a great opportunity for us because you can have them be closer to cheerleaders, or they might, if compelled, be closer to the third version, which are the people who hate your project for whatever reason. They have their own reasons, their own agendas, as we talked about before. And that one is the snake. So the animal avatar is the snake. And what I say is, if you don't know who your snakes are, here's what will happen to you. If you're skipping through the meadow of Projectland toward your goal, one might just jump up and bite you in the ankle when you least expect it, and generally when is least helpful to you and your project. So it's really important to do the stakeholder analysis that everybody knows we should do and sometimes we don't do. But especially for projects where stakeholder satisfaction is a really important next level part of the objective, then this is something that's super, super important. And I found that talking about animals makes it a whole lot easier for people to understand and even safer to talk about. Like, okay, well, who are our finicky fans?
I think it's brilliant to use the animal avatars. I think it really just evokes that. It's funny, as a San Diego native, I have been to the San Diego Zoo many times in my life. So while you've seen finicky fans in Philadelphia, I've seen the squawk together flamingos most of my life. So I'm familiar with all of the squawking, and we're all going to move to the right, or all the squawking and we're all going to move to the left. Like, that's a phenomenon I have seen many times. Yeah, part of my childhood. So they are evocative, right? We can really see and understand those behaviors in the people that we are working with. And I think it's also wise to highlight the range of the type of engagement you're going to get, because I know an early career me was like, well, I'm only ever going to have happy dog cheerleaders. Why would I have anybody else? They're buying the project. They're paying for the project. Why not love project? They don't teach that. They don't teach snakes and finicky flamingos, really, in the PEMBOK. They are a real life lesson learned.
Absolutely, which is part of the importance of the conversation and why you need to think about it, use the stakeholder analysis tools at your disposal. We have one that we use for every single project. And the idea is, and in training, you have to really think about, okay, let's cast a wide net here. Like, think about all of the stakeholders possible. And then you can decide, well, we're not going to do anything about those. You can make the decision and you can document that decision. When you talk to the sponsor about, hey, let's talk about stakeholders. Who are they? Maybe you draft it ahead of time. You have a very private conversation. You say, I feel these folks might not really know about the project. They're going to be impacted. How might we bring them along? What do you think their concerns might be? And make some decisions about it. And if they say, well, there's nothing we can do about this group, so we're just going to wait and see, then you document, wait and see.
What I like about this is that it really calls out and emphasizes the importance of getting to know and understanding your stakeholders and mapping them. I like what we said earlier about how this is you under pressure. This is your stakeholders under pressure. These are things that come out. So you might have a happy dog. Oh, such a big, good boy, good boy. But when they get backed into a corner, there's a snake in there. It's going to come out and get you, maybe. And you're not going to know that. You're not going to be prepared for that if you don't take the time to map them, understand what their interests are, what might turn them from a bigger boy into a fleur de lance, right? A venomous snake.
Yeah, I love that. And what you said there was so perfect. You have to take the time. You have to take the time. And so in your project schedule, there should be time for stakeholder analysis, review with the sponsor, make the stakeholder plan, decide the communication plan, et cetera. These should be tasks in your schedule so that you know that there's time to do it and when you should do it and who needs to be engaged in that conversation. Because what you don't want to have happen is that you open it all up wide, and some of these organizations that are, very transparent and be like, oh, well, Kate, we've identified you as a snake.
Yes, good. I'm honored.
Right?
Please do.
That wouldn't be the best choice. Unfortunately,
not everybody would be as honored as I am
to
be called a straight up snake.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Could I be a boa, please? I would like to be a boa.
Oh, I would like to be an anaconda. Absolutely. I want to be able to swallow your entire project and make it go away forever.
See, and I have met these people, but you don't tell them that, they've been identified as the anaconda in the room. So you need to be quite careful with this analysis. It needs to be private with you and the sponsor. The sponsor needs to understand the importance of it. And once they go through the exercise, they will. And I've literally now advised folks, and we've done it ourselves, to say, look, don't make it hard for the sponsor. Explain. cheerleaders, we have finicky fans, and we have saboteurs, potentially. And so let's put in our stakeholder register a column. Through the power of Excel, you can sort these things. C for cheerleader, S for saboteur, and F for finicky fan, and no one will know what it means but you. So if somehow anybody gets a hold of this thing, God forbid, nobody's going to know what that means. So don't label it.
Yeah, I'm going to find emojis, so I've got pictures.
There you go. We could have some, there is a snake emoji. There is.
Mm-hmm. Anything can be an emoji if you try hard enough is really...
I agree. That's what we've learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In Projectland Goes to the Movies, you've got a really good example of a snake. So I'd like to talk about that right after this break. All right, let's dive in. Let's talk about the snake in the grass in The Italian Job. This is one of your chapters in Projectland Goes to the Movies.
Yes. The Italian Job was the movie I chose for my chapter. So this one is near and dear to my heart. And so The Italian Job is a movie that I've actually used to do a complete workshop on. So that's why I knew it would work for our chapter. And there were so many lessons in that movie, but the one I chose was about the saboteur. And so if you don't know The Italian Job, the movie, I give you a little roll with it, which is what we do at the beginning of each chapter anyway, because we can't expect any reader to have watched all 22 movies. So what happens in The Italian Job in this moment is they're all standing around, and since this is PM happy hour, we can say this, drinking champagne from the bottle after their heist. And they're going around and they're saying, hey, what are you going to do with the loot? And so they're all talking about, what they want, right? And then they go through all of this, which is a fun exercise. And then they get back in the van and they're going to escape with all of this gold that they just heisted from Venice. And in the van, Ed Norton's character turns to handsome Rob, who is Jason Statham, points a gun at his head and says, I made some plans of my own. And he holds them up. And it turns out that the snake in the grass was actually on the team.
Uh-oh.
Now, these are thieves, so you can imagine how that happens. But it made me think about how there have been plenty of teams that I've been on where there was that one person who just wasn't really on board.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe they're not going to put a gun to my head. They probably fantasized about it many times, but they are not really with us. Totally. Yeah. Right? And so this is the scenario that happens in the chapter from Projectland Goes to the Movies.
Or they're with you until they get under pressure. And it's like, I said from the beginning, we should have canceled this project.
Yes.
I had a scenario earlier in my career where I would walk into the CIO's office and he would be like, Kate, you're running the number one project. This is our number one priority. Number one, you have all the resources you need to get whatever you need done to deliver this project. Like, great. And I would leave. And then the next project manager would walk in and he would be like, project manager, your project is number one. Whatever resources you need to get this done, we have them for you. You're going to get them. And I was like, there can't be two number ones. There can't possibly be two number one projects.
Not helpful.
It wasn't even necessarily that I wasn't number one, right? I could be number two, but having that gray area felt like sabotage because you have nothing to stand on. If I was clearly number two, I could be like, great, number one has been resourced, right? Yes, good. Can I have these resources that number one isn't using? And vice versa, right? The same thing could have happened for either project. But instead, I had somebody who just flip-flopped constantly. And I don't know if they knew they were being a saboteur. And I don't even think this was a finicky fan. Gosh, it was really early in my career. So I don't know why they were doing that. I think they were just uncomfortable making people uncomfortable or saying no. But I couldn't get straight answers out of people, which ultimately ended up like really making my project very, very difficult.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
It was very stressful. I know that we have PMs that deal with things like this. So you're not alone, babes. Like sometimes people are crazy. There's two number one projects that get all the resources they both want. ?
Right. How does that really work?
It didn't.
In working with the C-suite, there have been some fascinating creatures. That is for sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes I realized that it's not their fault. They just don't understand how Projectland really works. So all of their
Yes.
training to this point in their careers
Mhm.
they've been through some other training,
Yes.
like operations.
Yes.
And they don't understand how Projectland really works, that there are different roles and rules here, that this is a different place, that it needs to operate differently to succeed, that it is a pressure cooker, and that there are consequences to some of these things that they say,
Yeah.
to most of the things that they say and
Yeah.
the direction they give. So that's why I invented Sponsor School, because there were so many PMs that were like, will you tell my boss this? Why don't you tell my boss this? They need to get it.
Yeah. We've done some of that.
Right. I want to do more of this to help the PMs.
It's so funny because there are sponsors. I have a course that I'm teaching, just a workshop in a couple of weeks. And one of my points is that, like, especially sponsors and stakeholders you work with who are not project managers, like, to them, all work is just work. It's fungible. You can just move it around. And they'll also say things like, why don't we ever get projects done on time? While also just like rearranging everything whenever they feel like it, without knowing that what they are doing is rearranging everything. Like, it is that if you haven't come up through the project management world, work is just like, there's always more of it to do. And we have people to do it, and it'll just get done at some point. And I needed to change my mind today, so I just did, because there's always people to do work. Like, that is the way that people who haven't come up through projects think about work in general. And they don't understand this, like, the methodology that you can apply to give you higher likelihoods of success of completing and succeeding at the things you set out to do. It's wild.
So, Dawn, how do we identify these snakes? You know, we don't want to wait until somebody does an Edward Norton on us and pulls a gun and says, I've made my own plan. And so let's drill down a little bit and say, what can I do when I look at my team, I look at my stakeholders, and kind of identify who could turn into a snake if they came under pressure?
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because you also don't want to announce, like we talked about, that you've identified a certain person as a potential saboteur. Well, there are questions you can ask, like, who is going to be impacted by this? Or what groups might be impacted by this? If you're putting in a project, generally, you're going to introduce change of some kind. Is it a new service? Is it a new product? Is it a new software tool that is going to change the way people need to do work? Is it an enhancement to something that they need to do differently, or it's an opportunity? So there are questions about, well, what is it you're really doing and who will it impact? And then from there, you can say, okay, how will it impact them? And how might they feel? And that's a 4-letter F word that people don't talk about enough in Projectland, and I'm bringing back. Feel. How will people feel about the change or about this, whatever it is that your project is producing? And when you think about, well, what are the spectrum of feelings? There are a whole lot of feelings, but really, they're the 3 that we talk about. Are they going to feel happy about it? Are they going to feel negative about it? Or are they somewhere maybe in between? And then you can start to plan accordingly to just keep it very, very simple. You don't have to necessarily understand the differentiation between, are they going to be angry or sad? Negative is negative against your project at the top level. And then, of course, to the extent you can talk to people and have human conversations about, well, what do they do today? How do they do it? We're planning to introduce this. How do you feel about that? And ask it, and full stop. How do you feel about that? And seeing how they respond, as opposed to what do you think, which is something I learned the hard way as well, and asking that question differently. How do you feel about that versus what do you think? You get very different responses.
So you play a little bit of, to draw on other media, I'll play a little Littlefinger from Game of Thrones. What is the worst possible feeling somebody could have about this project? Or what is the worst possible way someone could react if we go over budget or go long?
Yeah. And then what are we going to do about it?
Yeah.
How can we prevent this? So I like to avoid pain. And I believe PMs are in the pain prevention business. And so this is one of the key places where you can help prevent pain, is in the planning of how will people react. So I love that, Kim.
Yeah. So many business behaviors come out of fear, I think. And so
Absolutely.
if you can help identify what is scaring people and maybe allay some of those fears, or Maybe there's even things you can do in the project to address those fears and concerns.
Yeah, and many times there are. So for instance, in software projects, you are introducing a new piece of technology. Now, some people are very tech savvy. Some people are not. Some people have been doing the same job in the same way on the same system for a while now, and they're very comfortable with it. So you're going to change what's expected of them, how long it takes. Their whole world just is blowing up, is how they might be feeling about it. And so one of the things that we've often done with software projects is we've said, hey, why don't you come test? Why don't you be part of the testing so that you can start to get a feel of this and it doesn't just land on your desk baked, right? So, when you're baking cookies, I don't know about you, but I definitely taste the batter.
Same.
If the batter doesn't taste good, then that cookie is not going to taste good. So why don't we show them some things, get some feedback as much as possible so then they can start to get comfortable and they can start to feel heard. And there's that F word again, feeling. They feel heard. That when they feel heard, then okay, well, this is really what their concerns are, or this question might really be, there might be a fear under that question. So you do need to do a little reading between the lines sometimes, especially in certain types of organizations and certain cultures like we talked about earlier.
All right. So I've been talking about the snakes, but let's maybe jump to the other end of the spectrum and talk a little bit about the cheerleaders.
Yeah. And sometimes they turn into snakes, which is really weird.
Yeah.
So I have this story in Meet the Players in Projectland called Meet Stakeholder Gabby. If I could read it a little bit, that might help. To understand more about how stakeholders can impact your project, imagine a stakeholder named Gabby. She is very excited about the software project you're leading because she's been advocating for it to be approved for 3 years. She thinks she's helping to get other people excited about the project too, by telling everyone who will listen about some of the helpful features that will be included to make their jobs easier. Unfortunately, since Gabby is not on the team, she is unaware that the project has evolved, and those features were deprioritized in the spirit of getting the core software released on time.
Oh, poor Gabby.
Have we ever seen this before, friends?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I go on to say, rather than being excited, the people who were all fired up for easier lives are now disappointed. There are those feelings again. Asking a lot of questions and putting pressure on the team to get these features done without the benefit of the sound reasoning behind the team's prioritization. While Gabby had good intentions, now the project manager has to engage in unexpected damage control activities, which many of us had to do. Harnessing Gabby's energy and engaging her appropriately would have helped to avoid this situation. And of course, Gabby feels terrible because instead of being a cheerleader, she accidentally became a saboteur. And some of those finicky fans that were on the fence turned into saboteurs too. So this is why even managing your cheerleaders in the right way is so very important.
They can be almost as much a liability as a snake. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've met stakeholder Gabby many times in different situations, and especially on fast-moving projects, it's so hard to keep your stakeholders informed at, the latest and greatest, and you never know if they're really understanding, really hearing what's going on, or if they just are hearing what they want to hear. So damage control is a skill that can be very helpful for project managers, even if you do everything in your power to try to prevent it ahead of time.
It's one of those things I've experienced too, where when you have a Gabby, when projects take a long time to get approved and started, and they are going to be exciting. And also, you had to really pump up what the outcomes and deliverables were going to be in order to get that work done. It's like you still need to be talking about all those things when you start the project. If your project isn't going to deliver those things and you're not talking about a clear path to them, your project is still at risk of getting cut. So one of the lessons I learned the hard way later in my career was like discerning a stakeholder Gabby from a really savvy political ally to your project. Because sometimes you have a leader who's excited about the new functionality, features, efficiencies, insert your buzzwords about what your project's going to deliver. Your life will be easier when this project is done. But your stakeholder has to keep saying that in order for you to have the support to even deliver core software functionality. And you, the project manager, also need to be echoing that while also saying that those features are coming in phase 2.
Yes.
And that can be tricky because it's hard to know, like sometimes Gabby is not actually sabotaging you and you need to help support her. And sometimes Gabby is sabotaging you and it's not clear. And you don't want to be the person who's like, actually, that's in phase 2. Don't say that, whenever she needs to be saying that it's going to happen no matter what to keep the support up, versus Gabby who's like, we're going to get all this stuff on May 1st. And you're like, no, not May 1st. We're going to get this. Gabby, we got to chat. Like there is a slight difference between Gabby who's talking about everything that this project will deliver with no promises assigned to it, and Gabby who is specifically promising specific features and expectations on specific dates that are not aligned to your project.
Excellent, Kate. I totally agree. And that's this is the people side, isn't it? This is the people side of project management that is so tricky and nuanced and exhausting to some of us who just want the people to do what they're supposed to do.
And also to know all the things that we wrote down. Like I wrote down the whole schedule and I told at least 25 to 500 people about it. What do you mean you don't also have it memorized like I do?
Right. Exactly.
A lesson I've learned the hard way around these, I think of these as a category of activist stakeholders. And I say activists because some of them they're activists like this. They're out there, they're shouting out, the good news. Some of them are activists in that they're so enthusiastic, they force themselves into your project in very unconstructive ways.
Yes.
And I like what you call here is, you said that harnessing Gabby's energy and engaging her appropriately. And that's just so key because there's a lot of energy there in an activist. And what you can think about as a project leader is how can I task this I need to keep their hands busy so they don't get into the wrong pot. And so what can I do to task them with that will keep them busy, keep them productive and not cause damage?
Exactly what I talk about in the stakeholder management section of the book in Meet the Players of Projectland. And it's so key. And I do believe, Kate, what you said earlier about we don't tend to get this in normal project management training. You tend to really learn this on the job.
Yeah.
Usually the hard way.
It's funny because I think a good example of a project that I personally am a dork and excited about and animal related in California, I forget exactly where, but they've built one of those wildlife bridges over a freeway, which allows for wildlife to traverse both sides of the freeway without having, and they go over it on a dirt and flora and fauna covered bridge rather than having to cross the dangerous freeway that also has the medians in the center. Like they actually can't really cross it. And if you look at maps of how wildlife lives, biodiversity is stuck on either side of a freeway. But you can build this bridge and then you can create more biodiversity between having the different sides of the wildlife habitats be able to commingle, which is amazing. But a project like that takes, I think they started this project 10 years ago and it's just now coming to fruition. It's a government funded project. It had to get a lot of approvals. So it's like you do need a Gabby to be excited. 10 years to get something that's not going to take them 10 years to build, right? The actual work is going to be contained after we get all of our permits, all of our approvals. And so you do need these cheerleaders, but I think there's the style under stress when don't worry about it. You'll have that June 1st. You're like, shut your mouth and don't speak about dates unless you talk to me first. And that's not what you could say to them. That's what you're thinking on the inside. But to your point, Kim, about managing them, we did an episode a long time ago about talking to sound bites. And so making sure that Gabby knows the permits are going to be approved on June 1st, and we are excited to start construction and break ground on, August 18th, 2027, if you need to say something that specific, so that Gabby knows what to say, so she can still be excited and still cheerlead, but not be accidentally signing you up for things you didn't agree to. God, I love Gabby, but Gabby's the best and worst place to be. It's amazing. But then you're like, oh God, I really have to manage Gabby if I want to get this done well.
Absolutely. I love the sound bites, and feeding the team with sound bites too is really, really helpful.
Yeah.
Because the team knows that what the really inner workings of the project is, and that the project is hard. Every project is hard. So they know that. And I had this situation where a team member became a saboteur as well by accident.
Ugh.
Yeah, I know he didn't mean to, and it was just totally how he operates. And then I learned from that situation early on the hard way that you need to give the team sound bites and give them the opportunity to know what is appropriate to say outside the project team when you're on a project that is especially under stress and visible to folks. So the soundbite thing works for stakeholders like Gabby, but also for the team. I love that.
I think sometimes in the past, I know my team has felt like I've been stakeholder Gabby. They felt like leadership has said, can we do that? And I said, yeah, of course we can do that. And then we leave the meeting and, my lead engineer will call me frantically, like, what did you just promise? Like, by August, you promised what? To which I say, hey, I didn't promise anything. What I said was that we can deliver that functionality. We'd get back to them with a plan. And here's the thing, their request wasn't time boxed, wasn't specific. And so I responded in kind. And so what we are actually doing is building good faith with this leadership team that we're a team they can depend on and is collaborative. So that's when I say yes to them, I'm telling I will be collaborative with you and help you work towards that date. And then what we will decide as a team is, what does being collaborative on that mean to us? What can we do within this time frame? What can we bring back to them if we're going to adjust the scope like this? And he was like, oh, like he didn't think that we had any power to come back to them with. And I'm like, but you can, as long as you're managing that in a way where, again, you're not promising something specific and then you go back, create your plan. Right. And then I have the soundbite from my team. I can take them. My team gets to hear me say the soundbite. Like, they've lived through that with me as well.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. I have had many situations where I was the PM and somebody above my pay grade promised something and without talking to me first. So I'm sure PMs have also been on that side of it. And that one is really, really tough because especially if they say yes to, like, let's say an external customer and they say, yes, we can deliver that extra functionality in the same time frame without changing anything else, is basically what we hear.
Yep.
And then I have to have the damage control conversation. Like, okay, well, where are the extra resources going to come from? What are we going to do? What are our options? How do you want to help me address this right now? What were you thinking? There's a lot of that has gone on until you train your whoever that person is in your world to talk to you first and have the words, the soundbite. If there's a request from said customer, let's say, how will you respond in a way that makes it safe to say yes? The yes, and we will get back to you on what that means or what the trade-offs are, or, what that also means from your perspective. Because usually you need their input. Usually you need time from them, that it doesn't magically happen perfectly in the way that they are imagining in their minds. So there's a lot to be done about extra scope requests that happen from wherever.
That feels like that's 90% of the job, is like people being like, can I also get this? And then the various ways you say no or yes, if you pay more. Like, it's the short graph that I would make. Yes, no, unless you pay more.
I'm just thinking how to keep the snake from coming out of myself at that point.
Yeah, any of us can sabotage our own lives, relationships, projects even. It is something that is inherently human. So hopefully this snake helps people to understand that, it's just part of what happens when people are under pressure many times. Now, sometimes there are evil people, and, we see that in movies for sure. We see that happen. I had a situation where I don't think he was evil necessarily, but this one steering team member, I know for a fact, got the project killed because he didn't want the new female leader to expose that he hadn't been doing his job very well for the past 10 years. So, and that's what the project would have done. So quietly, behind the scenes, he murdered the projects. Such a shame.
Yeah.
It was a good project too. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a stakeholder that I worked with in one of my roles, and in every I'll go with public facing meeting, right? Whenever there's other team members around, his peers were around, the sponsor was around. He was incredibly supportive of the work that I was trying to do. And a big thing I needed was, one, a team, and then two, dedicated resources from his team and others in order to get this work done. And he was always so supportive. And then when it came time to like put rubber to road, the resources he kept promising were never there. And then when I tried to talk to him about it, he was like, oh, I'm so sorry, we'll get those to you. And then I would go to the next phase to try to make rubber meet road, and they also weren't there again. And this was like sinister. It wasn't just like they weren't showing up to meetings. It was like they would show up to meetings, agree to work, and then not do the work. And so then escalating to him wasn't getting anything done either. And then I went to his boss, who I was working with directly, and he was like, oh, no, we're doing it. But like, no, we weren't. We objectively were not doing the work. It objectively was not happening. And I was like, why? And like, the only way I can think about it is that like something like that was happening. It was like an on purpose, we're not doing this because we have to do other things. And I'm still giving them a little bit of leeway there, but like, it didn't matter how much education, how much training, how much conversations I had, nothing dedicated ever got actually dedicated. So it is a infuriating thing to live through, to watch something get like murdered behind the scenes, like off stage, basically, in rooms you are never in and can't participate in. It was awful.
Yeah, and you have no idea. And you're like, what can I do? What is, and if you think it's you because it's your job to make it happen. It's so difficult. Yeah. And so don't worry, friends. It happens to all of us.
Yeah, it does. I've had a couple instances, and one in particular, and I work a lot on the vendor side. We'll implement projects for our customers. And I've had some customer stakeholders where they felt like it was their core philosophy that your job is to absolutely abuse, mistreat, literally verbally abuse all your vendors to keep them in line because that's the right way to do business. And just some of the worst people I've ever dealt with, unfortunately.
That is so sad. In the Projectland Goes to the Movies book, there is a chapter that addresses being the vendor. So being the PM on the vendor side, especially for SaaS situations, that is brilliant. It's a wonderful chapter that takes that vendor look. And it doesn't get addressed very often, this topic. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I was super excited that she had pitched that perspective for the book.
Do you remember which movie it leverages?
Yeah, it was The Man from Snowy River, which I didn't know about, but it's a UK, Australia movie that gets played every year. And she would watch it with her grandfather every single year when it would come on TV.
Okay.
So she had a very personal connection with that one. And it's really a lot about culture and mentorship. And she has her specific examples from her experience being a SaaS provider and working with PMs and mentoring PMs in that space. So check it out.
All right. Well, next on my list then, The Man from Snowy River. Thank you for this recommendation.
You bet. There are so many good movies. There are 17 different genres covered in our 22 movies. So if there's not something for everyone there, I don't know. They're just not movie people, I guess.
And Dawn, thank you so much for coming, and thanks for sharing these two great frameworks for project managers. I think they're easy for people to remember and to employ. We've got our framework for how to identify kind of core stakeholder behaviors, especially when they're under pressure. And I love the way you connected some really compelling moments, I mean, even ones that really highlighted for me, to how we execute and deliver projects.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I do hope it helps. I found that, like you, making project management fun is much more fun. And so, I'll use animals, movies, anything to help people get the concepts.
We like this, right? Like we like getting things done. We enjoy it. All of our little nerds out there listening to this podcast. I know you guys love this stuff. Like it's the skills to get these things done are hard, but like we love getting things done. So this is fun for us. That's why we keep choosing to do it.
Thank you.
It's great to have our framework, and to quote a movie that is quoted in your book, we're just making this up as we go. So, so it's great to have frameworks like this. So, Dawn, if our audience wants to learn more about your books and all the cool things that you're doing, where would they go for that?
Well, I'd love for you to find me on LinkedIn. And if you're searching for Dawn Mahan on LinkedIn, you only need one vowel. That's an A. Some people try to slip an O in there. So you just need an A for my name. And that is where I share lots of practical tips for surviving Projectland and fun things about the movie book and other events and so forth that we do. And if you want to find our fun and practical books, Projectland Goes to the Movies and Meet the Players in Projectland, they should be available in ebook and paperback wherever books are sold. And very fun, the audiobook Projectland Goes to the Movies is currently getting rolled out everywhere worldwide. And it is available on Audible and Spotify now.
Congratulations on that. That's so fun.
Thank you. Eric Priestman does an amazing job narrating this book, and he does the voices in the movies as well.
Very good.
It's very fun.
But does he sound like brother?
Well, I think people should check out the sample and find out.
All right.
And remember, you can rack up PDUs for reading as well, or listening to the audiobook.
Thank you so much for joining us. As we get the next round, I would love for you to propose a virtual toast.
I love this. How about to your success in Projectland and beyond?
Cheers.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
And that's our show. Thanks for listening. If you liked our show, please leave a review and a comment on iTunes or wherever you get our podcast. Your review really does mean a lot. And if you want to check out our membership site and all of our cool content there, you can check that out at pmhappyhour.com/membership. If you want to talk to us directly about project management, PM consulting, training, or whatever, our contact info is on our website under About Your Hosts, or you can just hit us up on our Facebook site at PM Happy Hour. You'll find we're really pretty easy to get a hold of there. And that's it for today. Good luck with your projects, and we hope to catch you again at the next PM Happy Hour. Cheers.